Hello beautiful community. This week I'm turning a mistletoe. I found this mistletoe on the forest floor many months ago. I tried to pick up the mistletoe off the ground rather than cutting it out of the trees, and there seems to be a lot more mistletoe around lately in spots that has never had mistletoe. There seems to be a lot more growing, and the mistletoe usually flower around November, but I haven't seen any flowers just yet, so it might be a bit later. Well, it's getting late in November and they haven't flowered yet, so hopefully I'll see some coming up shortly. Anyway, last couple of videos I haven't been talking too well. I've got bad hay fever. The grass is starting to dry off and the seeds are starting to float about, so I got a fairly bad case of hay fever last week, which knocked me about. So we haven't got long to go and it'll be finished. This mistletoe was fairly dry. It's been on the forest floor for some time. And the other day my father was saying that his uncle, back in the 1930s, so that was 90 years ago, coming up to 100 years ago, he used to work on the roads, and he worked on the old Hume Highway between Melbourne and Sydney. And his job was to get rid of the mistletoe out of the trees, because at that stage they were thinking that the mistletoe were killing all the trees, and so that was his job. It would have been quite interesting to work out how he actually got up into the trees to get the mistletoe back in those days. He probably used a rope or something like that. But I have noticed that there is a lot more mistletoe about, and I suppose it will affect some of the trees, because some of the trees have got a fair bit on them. But then on the other hand, it's nice to know that there are a lot of the mistletoe, and when they start to flower they bring with them a lot of birds and insects, so they're good in one way. I've been having a bit of trouble with the lathe lately. I believed it was the bearing out of the headstock that was faulty, and it was wobbling a fair bit, and I got to the stage where I was going to send it back to the manufacturer to get them to have a look at it and perhaps change the bearing. And just before I was going to give them a call, I gave it another once over, and I happened to find a couple of bolts that were connected to the headstock, and they were loose. So it wasn't the bearings in the headstock, it was actually the bolts holding the headstock together that were the problem. And that makes sense, because most of the wood that I turn are chunks of wood, blocks of wood, and it vibrates a fair bit before I get it down to a round cylinder. It's a lot smoother to turn then. I've got the lathe bolted down to the concrete, so obviously it's got to give somewhere, and these 4 bolts have come loose. Lucky I didn't give it to the manufacturer. I would have been without the lathe for a couple of weeks, and then they would have phoned up and told me I was a silly goose because it was only a couple of loose bolts instead of a bearing. So I would have made a bit of a fool of myself. Shouldn't be telling you this, for goodness sakes, don't tell anybody. So I ended up checking the lathe over and made sure all the bolts and the nuts were tight, and it's working like a dream again. It's going very well. Yeah, just check your nuts and your bolts, that's all I can say. So back to the mistletoe. I stabilised it in the cactus juice and then put some purple resin in there. And I didn't put too much of the purple in there. I wanted it to be a little bit clearer, just a slight hint of purple so that you could actually see the voids and the cracks. So that was another mistletoe. I've got a couple more mistletoe to do at some stage, and I'm heading up north over Christmas, so I'll be looking for a few mistletoes up there. A lot of the mistletoe I get here is from the eucalyptus trees, but up north there's quite a few that come off the ironbark trees, and they're a nice mistletoe, so I'll be looking out for those over the Christmas period. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. I'll see you next time. Cheerio.